How free are our politicians from external influence? But is that an excuse? No, it cannot be an excuse. Leaders in a multi-ethnic environment must also be different. You know, Nigeria, as Chinua rightly said, like all African countries, is an artificial entity. Chinua says in his book, The Trouble with Nigeria, that there is nothing comparable to how the European nations were created. There is no Nigerian, Chinua Achebe says, in the same way as there is a Danish or a Swedish or a Norwegian. Nigeria is a unique state with many states. The same is true of Kenya. The same is true of Ghana. Nigeria possibly has over 500 nations within her. Tanzania, 136. The Democratic Republic of Congo, 306. Kenya, 42. Uganda, 56. In order to be a leader in such countries, those who have the honor and privilege must be men and women who are prepared to ensure that they weld the bonds amongst those people. As Samora Moises Machel said, if the post-colonial African country is to succeed, the tribe must die. And the tribe must die because if the tribe does not die, then the new nation will never thrive. And I did not understand Samora Moises Machel to say that he should stop being a Yoruba. No. I did not understand him to say that he should stop being a thief or to stop being an Igbo or Hausa or a Fulani. No. Those are cultural mosaics which, when put together, make our nations beautiful and strong. But what do we do in most of Africa? We use those cultural differences to divide the people. We use those cultural differences to reinforce centrifugal forces and therefore threaten the very nation which we want to serve. I am telling all of us who are present here, and many of you who are present in this assembly who are honored and respected and claim to be leaders, that you have a duty to ensure that you are in front in order to serve and not to be served. But ladies and gentlemen, let us also ask ourselves about followership. You know, as a young student, and many of us who are young students, it was the culture when you are in your first year of studies that you must be a revolutionary. And a revolutionary in the style of Karl Marx. And therefore you would say, workers of the world, unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. All of us were revolutionaries. And we used to say then that the safety of the bourgeois demands that the proletariat be kept in the most profound ignorance. We were revolutionaries. Who is a leader? Is he a leader who allows meta-ignorance to reign supreme amongst the people he or she is leading? Is it the duty of a leader to ensure that he leads men and women who are enlightened? Men and women who can question what he or she is doing? I'm suggesting to us that true and sustainable leadership also requires that you have a followership that is enlightened. A followership that calls you to account. A followership that is going to make demands of you. A followership that when you say that you are going to improve the quality of their food, they do not believe that agriculture stops on that day, but they believe that agriculture must be intensified and the technology must be used. A followership which knows that when you say you are going to deliver heaven on earth, they know that that is merely an advertisement that you are incapable of delivering heaven on earth. A followership that knows that when you are promising to do things within 100 days, which ordinarily can only be done in 5 years, they know that you are a liar. A followership that is capable of discerning that when you speak things, there are many variables, and it is the duty of a leadership to ensure that such a leadership is indeed created. What do African leaders do? African leaders in many African countries have now assigned the question of education, educating their followers to NGOs and CBOs, which are financed by the Americans, which are financed by the Europeans, which are financed by other civilizations. How do you think, how do you imagine that the people of Denmark would have the interest of Nigeria at their heart? How are you satisfied that all those civic education activities that are being undertaken in Borno, or in Maiduguri, or in Abeokuta, financed by USAID, are meant to be for the benefit of Nigeria? Because the last time I checked, the English used to say, he who pays the piper calls the tune. So today, when you look at most of Africa, we have a followership that is tuned from outside. It is not a followership that is tuned from inside. And you wonder why they behave the way they do. They behave the way they do because they are being tuned by other civilizations. 3 years ago, an old friend of mine, now gone to be with the Lord, was engaged in a conversation with me. And I was complaining about the leadership, and he told me, I hear you, young man. You're always complaining about leadership in Africa and other parts, but have you ever wondered about the followership? Says you are complaining about the windmill, but do you ever bother about the wind? Is it not the case that the windmill follows the wind? I'm suggesting to you that Africa will never realize our potential as long as the critical mass of our people are immersed in sorrow and want. I am suggesting to you that Africa is not going to grow as long as you who are in positions of leadership have perfected the art of appealing to the stomachs rather than the minds of the men and women that you lead. I'm suggesting to you that Africa is not going to realize our potential as long as we continue to conduct the politics of money and money bags, not the politics of ideas. I'm suggesting to you that Africa is never going to realize our potential as long as we are dividing our people along ethnic lines. I'm suggesting to you. I'm suggesting to you that as long as you who are in positions of honor and privilege are in the business of dividing our people on the basis of religion, Africa is not going to realize our potential. I remember in 1982, I watched a movie about Mahatma Gandhi, and I remember that great man saying in one of the scenes in the movie that he remembers one day when somebody who was more enlightened than the other preachers came, and he said that on that day he saw that preacher reading from the Muslim Quran on to the Christian Bible, on to the Jewish Torah, on to the Hindu Gita, and on to incantation in African religion, as if it did not matter which book was being read as long as God was being worshipped. I look forward to the day when those of you who are in positions of leadership will be able to tell our people, wherever they are in Nigeria or Africa, that it is not for us to fight for God. if I have a God for whom I have to fight for, that is not a God. The God that I worship fights for me. And if we accept that that is the nature of God, that is omnipresent, omniscient, and He knows all, then we are going to unite our people. In other words, I'm saying that if we are going to have a followership that is going to change the continent of Africa, we have got to exorcise the ghost of ethnicity. We have got to exorcise the ghost of ignorance. We have got to exorcise the ghost of poverty. We have got to exorcise the ghost of narrow-mindedness. Fellow Africans, fellow Nigerians, it is still true that everything fails and falls on leadership. It is true that we men and women are in unique positions. Abu Bakr or Lusala, Saraki was present on this earth. Like all of us, he had his coming and his going. Today we are gathered here to remember him because, as South Sudan's John Garang Dimabior once said, as you walk the journey of life, there are two baskets that you fill by your words and deeds, whether wittingly or unwittingly. The basket of good deeds and the basket of bad deeds. And that at the end of it all, when we weigh those baskets, let it be said of you that the basket of good deeds outweighs the basket of bad deeds. It would appear to me that the late Dr. Saraki's basket of good deeds far outweighs his basket of bad deeds. And that is why we can say, without flinching and without equivocation, that he was a colossus. That is why you call him fondly by the moniker Oloye. That is why you are gathered here on a Monday morning to pay homage to him. Now I can see Saraki upstairs through imagination. I can see him asking us, who we are present here today, oh dear Nigerians, it is 10 years since I left you. Where are the leaders? I can see Saraki asking the president of this country, how have you served, Mr. President? I can hear him ask the vice president, how have you served? I can hear him asking the senators, how have you served? I can hear him asking the members of the House of Assembly, how have you served? I can hear him asking the governors, how have you served? As to how they have served, that is not for me to say. It is for them to say. But I can also hear the great Saraki asking the Nigerians, how have you been served? Have they given you food? I can hear him ask. Have they given you fuel? I hear him ask. Have they given you electricity? I hear him ask. As to whether they have been well served, it is not for me to say, it is for them to say. In other words, the great Saraki is asking both leaders and the led, have you demanded and have you served? And the leadership that I hear him, the great Saraki, asking of us is a leadership where we are united. Not the unity of the graveyard, whose lingua franca is silence. No. It is the unity of those who are seeking to do good. Those who are seeking to do good those who ask with the firmness that will open the eyes of the leader without inflaming their anger. I can hear it being said. You know, as I conclude, I remember this story, a story that must be known to you. It's a story about leadership, which must be contradistinguished from human leadership. It's the story of a shepherd, or the story of a poultry farmer. But I'll start with the story of a shepherd. Many of us from the north are famed for cattle keeping. And when you are driving the cattle through different grazing grounds, the cattle believe that you love them so much because you protect them from the elements, because you protect them from other wild animals. But if the cattle were to know that you are the one who would end up eating them, they would treat you very differently. Invariably, they do not know. And therefore, you will continue controlling them the way you do, and you will continue eating them the way you do. But it's a totally different case when you are leading human beings. They are not like cattle. You may lead them in a particular direction. You may think that you have lulled them into a false sense of security. You may think that you have deadened their minds. But always remember that one day, if you don't do that which is good and right for your fellow men, there is a day of reckoning. There is a day of reckoning, and history has demonstrated that it can come in the twinkling of an eye. History has demonstrated that kings have been toppled. History has demonstrated that presidents have been removed. History has demonstrated that great men have been cut down. History has demonstrated that men can rise when they are misled. History has demonstrated that men are indeed capable of rising up. You know, I always read these words of the American Declaration of Independence because I love them. They apply to humanity. Before America became what it is, they had enlightened men. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are born equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable right, that among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And it is for this reason that governments are instituted amongst men, and that when those governments fail to perform, it is the duty of those people to rise up and to remove such governments. I am submitting to us that we in the continent of Africa, you who have the honor and privilege of serving, you who worked and served under the tutelage of Oloye, today, let us take a solemn vow. Let us take a solemn vow that we are not simply here to memorialize him. We are not simply here to remember the good deeds that he did. We are not simply here to repeat the things that he did. That we have come here to imbibe the spirit of Oloye. We have come here to have a little Saraki in us, so that Saraki, the good politician, Saraki, the philanthropist, Saraki, the servant, Saraki, the doctor, Saraki, the business, can live a little in us, so that when we go home, so that when in the month of February Nigeria will be electing its leaders, it may be said that there was a Saraki and that good men and women rose and good men and women came out to vote and the best men did. God bless you.
Another resounding applause for Professor Patrice Lumumba. Thank you so very much. Thank you so much. Unprecedented standing ovation for him. just as he goes to take his seat, we thank you so very much. If the post-colonial Africa must thrive and succeed, tribe must die. Those are the words of Samora Machel as echoed at this occasion by Professor Patrice Lumumba.
Awesome, awesome.
Pa Oloye Abakar Olushola Saraki's legacies are indeed worthy of emulation. Please let's celebrate Patrice Lumumba one more time for that very wonderful lecture. It is a memorial lecture of Professor